Ethan Schaefer, will you confirm that you can hear us?
I can indeed hear you, Hannah.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, I'll call this meeting to order. This is a December 13th, 2023 meeting of the Manitou Springs Planning Commission. First, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Wilson.
Present.
Commissioner Casey. Commissioner Graybill.
Present.
Commissioner Latimer.
Present.
Commissioner
Day.
Day. Yeah, sorry. I
Present.
knew Megan. I was trying to get your last name. Okay, and I'm Commissioner Delwich. So first item will be approval of the minutes of the November 8th, 2023 meeting.
I move approval.
I'll second that.
Can I just ask that my name be spelled without an H? That's all.
Okay. If there are no corrections, all in favor? Vote. And one is abstention. Justin wasn't here. Okay, next we'll have time for non-agenda item discussion. If anybody in the audience would like to discuss an item that's not on the agenda tonight, now would be the time to do it. You can have up to 3 minutes to speak on a issue relating to our mission, which is a planning commission. And I don't see anybody, so we'll move on to the business of the meeting, and I'll just describe the process. I'll call an item for consideration. and planning staff will describe what the request was and their findings, and if they have any recommendations, then we'll allow the applicant to step to the table and state their case. And following that, we'll open the hearing to the public, and it'll be your opportunity to express your opinion on the item under consideration. And as we go, our deliberation is based on what's in the zoning code. We're not legislators, so we interpret what's in the code. So are there any conflicts or ex parte discussions that need to be disclosed? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. The first item of unfinished business is short-term rental 2306, 7 Jade Avenue, a short-term rental.
Thank you, Chair Delwich. Before we start staff's presentation, we did receive 2 additional public comments, so I'll be passing those out as staff begins their presentation.
Thank you, Chair. STR 2306 at 7 Jade Avenue is requesting a short-term rental permit for a 1-bedroom, 1-bath and 2 guests. I'm going to address a few questions that we anticipate hearing in advance. In terms of determining eligibility for a short-term rental, when we receive a request, we look to see if that property is within 500 feet of an existing short-term rental buffer and permit. This one was not, and therefore it can be considered. Additionally, there is no buffer requirement between denied applications. Staff is required to take applications even if they were in a similar area that had been heard before. The code allows for 2% of the city residential structures to be used as short-term rentals. Right now, we have 47 structures that qualify for that designation out of the 54 that are allowed per code. Right now, we do understand that Airbnb may show that there are more, but that's because hotels and others that are qualifying under a different permit type for short-term rentals also may list on those websites. The city does monitor illegal Airbnbs through a software called Host Compliance. So it monitors how frequently something is being leased. If it's being leased with a greater frequency than is allowed under a long-term rental and is therefore a short-term rental, that's something that then is issued as a notice and addressed with people that are not in compliance. So that's how we monitor and enforce. Next slide, please. A couple other things that it's because although the new code went into effect March 1st, these are still some of the first few that went under this new code. Short-term rental permits under the new code do differ in some ways, and in the past, a business license is required. So after this is approved, there still would be an application for a business license. Neighborhood services would inspect for life safety to make sure the structure is safe, and the permit is valid for 1 year from date of issuance and must be renewed yearly and confirmed that there's continued compliance. If there's a violation per the chapter, and there's a code section that addresses that. The requirements for short-term rental are what is listed under the owner acknowledgements. The owner is committing to abide by those for the next year from the date of issuance. The request that was made is for a short-term rental operation at 7 Jade for 1 bedroom, 1 bath with a maximum occupancy of 2 people and 1 vehicle. The owner would not occupy the home at the same time as the renters, and the other bedroom in the building would be off limits to guests. The zone is considered low-density residential. A little bit of background, the 7 Jade is a 6,475 square foot lot. The home was constructed in 1899 and has 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, and has historically been used as a single-family residence. The application criteria that staff reviews is, has the property owner submitted an acknowledgement of the short-term rental permit applicability checklist, has the property owner signed the primary residence affidavit and acknowledges occupancy must reside at the property for a minimum of 185 days each year, starting from the date of issuance of a short-term rental permit and business license obtained. And the property is not within 500 feet. The property owner also provides a site plan and a listing advertisement for staff to review confirm that what's being required to be shown is shown. Since the continuation, the applicant has made several clarifications to planning staff. They issued a clarification that they have added Dylan to the ownership list, and that he will be the owner that is considered, it will be meeting the owner occupancy requirement of 185 days. Because of how the listing printed out, he wanted to make sure that we knew that events are not allowed at 7 Jade, and that quiet hours were revised to as part of the house rules to make sure that that was in compliance with city codes. Next, why was this application allowed to be continued? Applicants are allowed to request a continuation to a date certain under code section 18.06.3.8. Hearings are considered kept open to take in additional information until a final decision is made. Why would this not be considered a new application? Again, under that code, applicants are permitted under city code to make changes to their application until a final determination is made by the decision-making body. And then why is a buffer not held where there have been short-term rental permit denials in the past? The code does not allow for the city to disallow applications from being heard by decision-making bodies based on past denials. If the city were to disallow applications from being heard, this would constitute a taking. So that's why we are required to go through this process with any eligible property. For context, this is the location of 7 Jade, called out in red. Here are some site imagery showing the western yard of the property, and this is the western face that faces Pawnee. This are two more views of the property. One is showing the carport where the single space is allowed. Another picture showing a car in that spot meeting the requirements. The short-term rental requires for each bedroom, for the first 2 bedrooms, there be 1 parking space. So there's 1 bedroom being allowed to rent and therefore 1 parking space. Here is a floor plan provided by the property owner and applicant that shows the emergency routes as well as other emergency information and contact information. The property owner, Dylan Widner, acknowledges the short-term rental permit applicability checklist. He has signed the 185-day owner occupancy application. The property is not within 500 feet, and these deliverables have been provided. We have received it's changed since I made this presentation because we've received them this evening. We had 8 letters and emails prior to 5 o'clock this evening. We have 2 more that Hannah has passed out to you. The approval criteria for a short-term rental is that the short-term rental does not adversely impact the surrounding uses, and short-term rental does not encroach upon traditional neighborhood characteristics. Staff recommends that should the commission find it appropriate to approve STR 2306, staff recommends that the condition that the renters and the owners will not stay on the property at the same time because the parking requirements were reviewed under that assumption. So wanting to formalize that in the approval. And this would be the motion language. Thank you.
Any questions for staff? Megan?
Is the affidavit that was submitted the only proof of occupancy? I mean, we have proof of ownership now, but is there proof of occupancy beyond the initial things that is required or appropriate?
I'll answer this, and if Hannah wants to add any more. So occupancy does not have to be proven in the past. So someone could purchase a property in Manitou and then make that request, assuming it was eligible under all the other requirements. So the owner occupancy affidavit is a commitment to living there 185 days in the next 12 months. And that's how the code is written.
Okay, would the applicant like to step to the table, state your name and address for the record? Oh, you have to push the button in the middle and stand about, keep it about 3 inches from your face.
How about this?
Perfect.
Hi, I'm Dylan Weiner. I'm one of the owners of 7 Jade Avenue.
Okay, it's your opportunity to make your case.
I think Aaron pretty much explained the application. We're advertising as a 1 bed, 1 bath, 2 person, 1 vehicle, max occupancy. Other than that, if you have any questions or concerns, I will happily answer them.
I'm sure you're aware that a short-term rental was denied very close to your home recently.
I understand, sir.
So if you can just say a few words on why, I don't know if you know the details, why that one was denied or not. Or in other words, what's difference between your application and that one? Is that?
I'd say the difference is the size in the person occupancy of the Airbnb. I believe the one that was denied was, I think, a max occupancy of 11 or 7. It's a larger home. And, I can see and empathize with why, the neighbors would not want that large of a Airbnb to take place in their neighborhood. With 7 Jade Avenue, it's a 1 bed, 1 bath, 2 person max with 1 vehicle max, for the advertising of the Airbnb.
In the listing of the property, it says it's a 3-bedroom home.
Yes and no. We recently renovated the home, and it turns out it's really only, 2 bed, 2 bathroom, inside, and we're only advertising the lower half of the building.
Do you currently live there?
Yes, ma'am.
Is your plan to live there this year?
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else? Justin?
So when you're renting it out, where will you live?
On the advertisement, we have the upstairs blocked off, and it will be sealed off with the door, and nobody would be able to get up there to unlock the door to really invade my, my belongings.
Have you spoken with any neighbors about this?
Yes, sir.
Which ones?
I believe Kim, who lives to the right of 7 Jade below the property. Outside of her, I believe her neighbor, I can't remember her name, but I spoke with her as well.
Could you describe the nature of that conversation?
They don't agree with it. It's their own personal opinion, and they have a right to their own opinion, and that's how I feel about it.
In your opinion, what, if any, impact will this have on the neighborhood?
Personally, very little. I don't think a 1 bed, 1 bath, 2 person occupancy is going to create, too much noise, too much invasion of privacy. I don't think people are coming to Manitou to party and drink and, do that. There's tons of trails. There's mountain biking. I think that's the goal and why people would want to travel to Manitou Springs.
Alan. Thank you. Mr. Widener, it appears that you are a recent, through the process of quitclaim, that your name is now on as owner.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you explain how that, not necessarily how that happened, but why that happened? Because it's different than the application that we received in November.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the application, the property owner had to be a primary resident of Colorado, which I am. And the 7 Jade property is it's a family home. We do everything as a family. And so in order to, attempt to get this approved, we went ahead and put my name on the quitclaim deed and went through that process.
Has that been approved at this point, or is it still in process with El Paso County?
I believe it is approved. I think it's just a matter of when it will be published on the Taxi County website.
As of November, you were registered to vote at 17 Narrows Avenue. Is that where you used to live, and what's happening to that property. Do you still plan to live there half the year?
No, sir. So that is it's a duplex. We actually bought it from Mr. Casey a couple of years ago, and I moved out of there to move into 7 Jade, and it's currently being rented as a long-term rental.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Can I ask staff a question before you? No? In staff's report, it says the owner will not occupy the home at the same time as the short-term rental guests. And then the code says short-term rental. Wait. It's right here. The short-term rental shall be the property owner's primary residence. Oh, wait, sorry. The individual rooms in the dwelling shall not be available for short-term rental unless the owner of the property resides on the property. But he's saying he is not going to reside on the property.
The clarification is that the short-term rental, the applicant or the owner, that has to be their primary residence. So what the staff's clarification or condition is saying that when he's renting it out for 21 days or more per year, that other half of the time where he does not have to reside on the property, we reviewed the parking allotment based on him not also being there. Because if 2 bedrooms were going to be occupied, then we would have assessed it for 2 parking spots.
You plan on renting on Airbnb and other sites such as that for a majority of the 185 days that you say you will not be living there?
So we're only going to advertise it on Airbnb, and it's yes and no. So like I can be away from work for 4 to 5 weeks at a time. I can go ski for a weekend and use the Airbnb during those weekends. But outside of that, I plan on living there.
Thank you. No, I just have one more follow-up. We've received a number of letters in opposition to your request, and Commissioner Justin has asked if you've had any conversations with your neighbors, and could you say a little bit more about that? Because to me, it's unusual to get so many letters of opposition.
Yeah, I think the conversation I have with a couple of them I mentioned to him earlier was, they of course are entitled to their own personal opinions of opposing an Airbnb next to their property. And that's how I feel about it. It's their personal opinions and they have a right to it.
Okay, it seems like earlier your father said that it was going to be his primary residence. And he signed an affidavit expressing that back in October. What happened with that? He's not going to be primary resident now?
Primary resident on the quitclaim deed. Myself, my mother, and my father are all, property owners of 7 Jade. We just added my name to it.
I understand that, but he said he was going to be the resident, it was going to be his primary residence.
Yeah, I mean, he's retired now, and he plans on visiting here for a couple months at a time, and that's his ownership of the property.
So what he signed before something changed, and now he's not the primary. It's not his primary residence if he's just going to be here a month or two now and then. I'm a little confused about how this thing has progressed. It sounds like he wasn't really going to be the primary resident. And so you got quitclaimed on and you moved from 17 Narrows. I'm just a little confused and trying to understand where he fits in, since he was the one that purchased the property.
Yeah.
And after the fact, you became a part owner of it.
Well, after the fact, it was told to us, that part of the application, the primary resident, owner had to be living, in Colorado at 7 Jade. And so once we found that out, we put my name on the quitclaim deed and turned it to El Paso County. I moved into 7 Jade, summer of 22. I moved from 17 Narrows to 7 Jade.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on? Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we open to the public?
No, sir.
Okay, if we have more questions, we'll bring you back. Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
Okay, the public hearing is open now, and this is your opportunity to speak, and we'd like to try to hold it 3 to 5 minutes max. And if you want to, if you get up and say something, if you don't want to repeat what someone else said, just say, I agree with what someone else said. And that'll way we can hear it, more people, and not be here all night. You can start by stating your name and address for the record.
Hello. My name is Kimberly Littleton, and I live at 317 Pawnee Avenue, which is right next door to Dylan's house. This is my partner, Karen Toe. Do you need me to?
Yeah, just for the record, just both state your name and address, and really get within 3 inches of it. Just, you can move the mic closer to you.
Hi, I'm Karen Toe. I live at 317 Pawnee, and I also own 304 Pawnee, which is just on the same block across the street.
So before I read my little thing here, I just want to say thank you to the commission. I appreciate your volunteering time, and thank you to the planning department for all your work. Okay, so my name is Kimberly, and I live at 317 Pawnee. I have lived in Manitou for 18 years now. Karen has lived here for almost 30 years. Most of our neighbors have been here for comparable lengths of time, if not longer. I know all of my neighbors, literally all of my neighbors, all the people that live on Pawnee and beyond. This is but one facet to the character of our neighborhood. Karen and I will be impacted by the presence of a short-term rental as we live next door to 7 Jade. In fact, their home sits above ours in such a way that anyone standing in their carport or sitting at the countertop they installed at their window will have a bird's eye view of me and my family in our own backyard. Not only do I know my neighbors well, but I also know their pets and their children. When I see my neighbors' dogs running free, hot and tired on a summer's day, or running free as they've been frightened out of their own yard by a summer thunderstorm, I bring them in, I water them, and then I walk them home. If my neighbor can't get out to walk her dog, she is comfortable calling us to ask us to take Augie out when we walk our own dog. When a snowstorm comes, I shovel my neighbor's driveway because I know that she has recently had a back issue and cannot do it herself. We have a group of neighborhood kids that often come and play next door, bicycling, playing in their fort, or sliding down the middle of the road on something akin to a boogie board on a snowy day. Our neighborhood is special. It's special in a way that we all know each other and we watch out for each other. With that knowing comes a strong sense of security and accountability. We are accountable to each other. We advocate for each other and we genuinely care for each other in a way that is neighborly and respectful. This is not something that happens with transient neighbors. Transient neighbors do not have the awareness of the neighborhood kids that hang around and play on our street. They don't have the awareness that the middle schoolers walk up our street every Friday for an outing. They don't have the awareness that wildlife, we share our street with wildlife, bears and others. And they're due the respect of not putting out trash just anytime in a non-secured can. Transient neighbors do not know that we live in a wildfire-prone environment. And they do not know that many neighboring folks walk Pawnee Avenue daily to access the trails and get exercise. Transient neighbors are not going to be accountable to my family or to my neighbors. I tried talking to my new neighbor about this, to Dylan, and I felt like my concerns were largely dismissed. I cannot say to you today that I know my new neighbors any more than I knew them a year ago. Their presence in the last year has been intermittent, and the house feels more occupied rather than lived in by engaged neighbors. An unvetted stranger's presence next door will have a negative impact on the character of our neighborhood because there is no neighborhood knowledge, there will be no accountability, and our neighborhood security and peace and quiet will be compromised. Our neighborhood relationships and neighborhood character are unique, and they are very much worth speaking out for. And this is why I am opposed to having a short-term rental next door. Thank you.
I just wanted to point something out in the application. If you look at page 33 of the packet, the checkout instructions state to throw all trash in can outside of the home, which is definitely a violation of city code, and it shows disregard and lack of respect for our community and the environment.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm good. My name is Sonia Cox. I'm the one that recently moved into the 21 Eagle that was denied by this board, I guess, a few months or right before I moved in. So I'm very lucky that that happened. So thank you all so much for that. I basically want to say I know nothing about this process. I'm retired military from here in Colorado. The reason I moved to this area from Woodland Park was because I have elderly parents that I needed to have move into the house with me, that big house that we got at 21 Eagle. And they're there all day long. And I take care of them, and we like the nice, peaceful living that we currently have. We chose that location specifically for that, so we can have that since they're disabled and they can't even leave the house. So having this property occupied here and there by various people right in front of us is not something we were looking forward to. That's it. Thanks.
I'm Sheila Kincaid. I live at 344 Pawnee Avenue, which is right across from 7 Jade Avenue. I grew up in the house that Dylan is living in now. So I have been in this neighborhood for 72 years. And just like it's already been said, we are a neighborhood. And you mentioned about one of the things about having an Airbnb is what impact it will have on the character of the neighborhood. And what makes part of the character of any neighborhood is traffic. Manitou, Pawnee Avenue, above the school, does not have sidewalks. And it is the way that people get to a very active trailhead. And so it's not uncommon for large groups of people, especially children from Manitou, going up the hill with guardians. And so there could be like 2 dozen kids and adults walking up that street. We as neighbors are aware of that. So I am thankful that the city has put up a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit sign by the school. That's nice, but for new people who are coming up that hill, they're not aware of how we adjust to pedestrians. And so I think it would have an impact on our neighborhood, the character of our neighborhood by the traffic situation. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Patty Bond and I live at 320 Pawnee. I've lived there for 14 years and Jade Avenue is about 50 yards from my house. And everybody has pretty much covered what I was going to say, but I just want to tell you about Jade Avenue. It's a single lane road right off of Pawnee. It's dark. It climbs in elevation. It leads to 2 houses. One is Dylan's and the other is the house above it. And there isn't room for any additional parking on Jade Avenue because it blocks the access in and out to the other home. So we have had several cars towed in the past month from parking there and blocking in the resident. So that leaves Pawnee Avenue and Pawnee on Jade Street. There's already a lot of cars parked there. It's a very congested area there. And like Sheila said, Pawnee is a dead end street and it's the main pathway and footpath to Intamin and Iron Mountain trails. And residents from all over town, like from the downtown area, from the Canyon Street area, everybody comes to Pawnee to walk up, to go to the trails, and they walk their dogs. And as Sheila said, there's no sidewalks on Pawnee, so everybody walks in the street and it's a continuous flow of foot traffic. So that kind of worries me because it's with parked cars and no sidewalks, it's a little narrow. And as Kim said, every Friday, Manitou Middle School has their outdoor fitness day. And the past 3 Fridays, I have seen 30 children, middle school children, walking up with their teachers to go up from the school up Pawnee to get to Intamin Trail. They hike the trail a little bit, then they all come back down. It's a cacophony of children's noises and it's very crowded and they're in the middle of the street. And then also Manitou High School's running club regularly practices running up and down Pawnee. And they do their training. And it's all about the kids and it's a very special neighborhood because we have families and we know each other. And the house next door to me, which is across from Jade, is somehow the gathering place for kids from all over Manitou. They come from all over and they congregate and they ride their bikes, their skateboards, they play soccer, they play ball, and they just hang out. So I feel like a short-term rental would really jeopardize the specialness and camaraderie and the children of our neighborhood. So that's why I'm against the short-term rental on 7 Jade.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sebastian Giroux. I'm the owner of 315 Pawnee Avenue, which is right next to Kim and Karen. Here, let me.
My name is Michael Pemberton. I also reside at 315 Pawnee Avenue.
Okay, I wrote this in a letter to the Planning Commission, but I'll just reiterate a couple things. And I know some of my neighbors have already said some of these things, so I'll make it brief. So this section of Pawnee Avenue around 7 Jade is definitely not a good area for STR traffic. As some of my neighbors have said, the area is not well lit at night and has no sidewalks or turnarounds. As again, some of my neighbors have said, there's adults and children along with hiking pedestrians that will be put at risk by an increase in non-local motorists who are unfamiliar with our street. And just to that example, today when I was driving down the street, I had to drive 2 miles an hour. People unfamiliar with the way that you have to drive around here, that poses a huge risk, not only to pedestrians, but other motorists, other people parked on the street. I think there'll be an increase in potential accidents with that as well. Also, STR increases the likelihood of parties, which increases the chances of impaired drivers driving up and down our street, along with after hours noise violations.
And then just another thing to touch on, I know we talked about wildfires and their danger, but if you actually go to the Manitou Springs Gov site assessment for the introduction risk map, it is that 7 Jade is listed as a very high wildlife risk. And we all understand how dangerous and detrimental the wildfires are around here. So I feel like that is something that we should bring more to attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Evelyn Hope Manna. I live at 16 Eagle Avenue, and I'm going to turn my time over to my husband, who will speak for both of us.
I've got my comments written here, so I'm going to skip some of them. So there might be a little space in here because there's been some things said that I don't want to say it over again, so I'll skip them. But there's a question came up as to why did Mr.
Yeah, get the
Okay.
mic real
Okay.
close and
Sorry.
just
My-
start
my
with your name
is-
and address.
My
please.
name is Joe Minna. I'm sorry. 16 Eagle Avenue. We've lived there for 24 years through 4 renovations and snowstorms and everything else. The question came up as to why Mr. Widener decided not to be the primary applicant. The reason is because when he filed his application on October 3rd, he swore that under oath that he would be that it was his primary home and that he would be there 185 days. It is not his primary home. Mr. Widener resides at 2813 Balfour Court in Rockland, California. He's been there for over 20 years. Okay. He knew when he swore under oath that he risked being perjury, actually being perjured. So he went back to California. He asked for that extension, that continuation. He went back to California and he developed this plan that he and his wife would quit claim a fractional interest to Dylan. And Dylan I was in the oil industry for many years. I dealt with fractional interests for 20 years. So they went to the notary there and they filled out a quitclaim on November the 25th. Okay, I talked with the assessor's office here in El Paso. You don't even have to record that quitclaim. Once that quitclaim is signed by everybody, that's when the property transfer takes place. The recording, you don't even have to record it. Now, the person I talked to said you'd be crazy not to record it, but you don't have to. So the ownership transferred to Dylan, excuse me, I struggle with that name, Dylan, on November the 25th. Okay. But the problem is he filed an application and he swore he was the owner on November the 21st. He was not the owner. He is, and as of right now, we do not have a signed valid application from Dylan because he signed it on the 21st, 4 days before the quitclaim was done in California. Okay, I don't mean to be the Scrooge that show Christmas, but he signed on the short-term rental owner occupancy affidavit statements, which reads in part, this, by signing below, I, Dylan Widener, swear under the penalty of perjury that I am the owner of the property and this is my primary residence. Okay, that was not true on November the 21st. If he had waited another week, that would have been a true statement. But, you know, while we all watched that football game the other night when the guy had his toe over the line, you know, and that play was called back, and now a Hall of Fame play disappeared. This is kind of almost the same thing. The toe went over the line. So he's just, I don't think that Dylan did it on purpose. That's not, and the guy in the football game didn't line up offside on purpose. It happened. It was called. Those are the rules, and that's the way it is. I'm pretty sure that David Widener is a very successful man. He bought over $1,800,000 worth of properties in in Colorado Springs and Manitou Springs since 2019. Okay, he says in here he would like to operate this for a little extra cash flow. If you can afford to buy about 5 properties that total $1,800,000, you probably don't need a little more cash flow. I ran an oil company for years, and you know, I never had to tell a falsehood to get a lease. I always told everybody the truth. My word was my bond, and so that's the way it is. You know, I don't think that Dylan did it on purpose. I think that he just got excited a little bit, and was enthused, and his dad said, go down and file that application. And he went down and filed the application. In the industry, in the real estate industry, and oil industry, there's a thing called a straw man. A straw man is an individual who acts as a front for others that actually incur expense and obtain the profit of a transaction. In this terminology employed by real estate dealers, a straw man is an individual who acts as a conduit for convenience in holding and transferring title. So the definition goes on to say is a person whom title or a business interest is transferred for the sole purpose of concealing the true owner or the business machinations of the parties. We know who the true owner is. We know who will have control of this. And Dylan's not going to be around all the time. And they are still, his wife, him and David himself, and now Dylan are all will be on the property as owners. And so I believe that this definition that I obtained from that free dictionary on the internet describes what's going on exactly. Mr. Widener is used to doing business transactions. This is nothing but a business transaction to him. He says they're going to do it for a little more cash flow. Okay. To come into a neighborhood such as ours, where we have tremendous closeness, you wouldn't believe how close our neighborhood is. And it actually was changed last year. It was changed in April when this board denied that short-term rental at 21 Eagle Avenue. It went from having 10 cable cars parked in the driveway to a wonderful family living there. And it's so funny on Halloween. We have been there 24 years, never had anybody show up. On Halloween night, Sonia and her mother show up dressed as witches. Okay. And I opened the door. I said, we don't have any candy for you guys. She said, no, but we've got some for you. That's the kind of neighborhood we have. Okay. This 7 Jade is approximately 150 feet from 21 Jade. Everything that everybody said about 21 Jade or 21 Eagle being a bad location and all that stuff, that was true. but it's a wonderful location now. We used to see 30 ins and outs in our driveway, which we share with this property. And we see 5, 4 a day now. And we have a great time and we have a wonderful relationship. And I think it's going to last forever. So anyway, this is how it would change our neighborhood. I don't want to come home to our house every day and wonder if the guy next door has developed a devious plan to take advantage of myself and my wife and our property. And it's not worth the money. It shouldn't be worth the money to. It's a nice house. It's a beautiful house. He can rent it for long term or he can sell it and make a profit. And that's exactly what the people did with the 21. They sold it. They did well. And
Hey, Joe,
okay, that's
you're
it.
getting,
That's it.
you need to sort of wrap it up.
Okay, that's all right. Okay. Well, I think that's the end of my story, but I hope I fill a few of the blanks in as to what happened. Okay. And why.
Thank you.
Okay. Get out of here. All right. Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, members of the commission. I'm Dan Stewart, 601 Southside Road, Manitou Springs. I submitted a letter dated November 7th, and I won't read the letter to you. I believe you have that in your packet. I wasn't clear when the applicant was speaking. He was asked a couple of different times, do you reside there or do you intend to reside there? And the first time he said no, that the upstairs is blocked off. And then he was asked again, and he said yes. And in the application, I know that it was amended and clarified, but I believe page 17 is that fire exit page, and that page has an address for both Dylan and his dad with that California address. So I'm still not clear where the residency is, but apparently his dad lives in California. I believe Dylan's indicated that he lives in Manitou Springs. My neighbors have done a great job describing the character of the neighborhood. Clearly an STR is not compatible with this neighborhood. The neighborhood is stable. It's got many long-term residents, as has been said. So I agree with those statements. The property is actually, 7 Jade is actually much closer to 21 Eagle Avenue. It's essentially contiguous. It's right across the street on the south side of Jade Avenue from 21 Eagle. And the Planning Commission, as you noted, indicated just 8 months ago that use was incompatible with the neighborhood, and clearly the conditions of the neighborhood have not changed in the last 8 months. It's been mentioned that Jade Avenue is essentially a single lane road. It is the only access to 310 Iron Mountain Avenue. And so I know already emergency vehicles and delivery trucks have a difficult time maneuvering Jade Avenue to access that neighboring property. So the addition of constantly changing vehicles, unfamiliar with the street and neighborhood, increase the risk of that access being blocked. And it's already been mentioned that the increased traffic, people unfamiliar with the neighborhood, impacts the neighborhood in a negative way. I wanted to dig in a little bit deeper to the last point that I'd made in my letter, and I appreciated staff mentioning at the beginning the 54 unit limit to STRs in Manitou Springs, and indicating that apparently there are 47. I'm not entirely clear what the other permit requirements are for other properties, but the continuance gave me an opportunity to dig in a little deeper, because I'd said in my letter that that a quick review of Airbnb and VRBO disclosed advertisements for more than twice the allowable number of such units. And I was a little uncertain about that. I mean, I saw the gross numbers there, but hadn't looked in detail. So I had the opportunity in the last 3 weeks to do that research and determine that in fact, as you might imagine, if you've looked at those listings, there are duplications on both sites. I didn't look at other sites, and I understand there are short-term rentals listed on other sites perhaps as well. But so I went through and compared one site to the other, listing by listing by listing on each site to get rid of all the duplications. And what I found was actually 32 or so on Airbnb that were distinct units, 31 on VRBO that were other units, which puts us right away over the limit allowable. There are a number of units on the city's map that are licensed now as or registered as short-term rentals that may not have active listings right now, but I assume those are included in the city's total. So with those additionally, I came up, the conservative number I got to was about 69. It might be somewhere between 69 and 89 based on the numbers. And I understand that some of those may not be countable in this way. I'm glad to share that information with staff. I know that tonight you're.
Yeah, we're focused on the other. In fairness, you need to wrap up.
Sure. And I appreciate that. And my point is that this application should not be allowable under the code as it exists right now. Thank you.
Thank you. You need to turn the mic on, push a little button in the middle.
Sorry. My name is Brock Munsell. I live at 611 South Side. We're one property away from Jade, 7 Jade as the crow flies. I'm not going to add a lot. I submitted a letter as well, and it covers a lot of the points that my neighbors made. I'm really here to support them and to share with you that, you know, if I look at this crowd here, every one of them is a neighbor to that property, and nobody's for it. So I would just ask that you reject the application based on that. We're a neighborhood. We don't want strangers coming and going. And we embrace even long-term rentals. There's many of them that are there and they become part of the fabric. And many of them go on to buy houses in Manitou and, you know, live their entire lives here. So that's all I have to say. And thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Erin Nelson, and I live at 8 Eagle Avenue. I'll be real quick because I agree with all my neighbors, but last time I got up here with my 4 little sweet kiddos to try to help make a point that this is not a transaction for anybody in this neighborhood except the owners of this property. And I hope that you guys can respect all the things that we've shared. This would cause a huge risk factor to my children. Several have already talked about the kids that use Pawnee Avenue on a very regular basis. My kiddos are still pretty little, ages 2 through 7. So they're not generally on the road without their parents. But I would feel very comfortable if any of my kids happen to wander into a parent's yard or go or a neighbor's yard, excuse me, and knock on the neighbor's door, because we all know each other. They know my kids, and I would not feel safe like that with having renters changing out of 7 Jade so often. So I hope that you'll consider all of this.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chandra Collins. I'm at 405 Pawnee, so I'm just above Jade. And if I can, I think most of you are familiar with the infrastructure. It's a very windy.
Yeah, could you
road.
get pretty close to the mic so we can get a good recording?
I just took a couple notes. I should probably pull it up so I could be quick. I think one of my concerns is the unique, obviously, there's a unique characteristic of our neighborhood. But the infrastructure is also very unique because you're heading up between Iron and Red Mountain. And so the previous issue that we had with the end of Eagle Avenue, with the previous VRBO and the traffic issue, it's the single lanes that just sprout off of Pawnee. So Jade's the same way. And I have seen in the 12 years that I've been there, emergency access, city vehicle access, garbage access. A lot of times this road, Jade, parallels the same as Eagle did. So a big problem, if I recall, on the VRBO last time, or the short-term rental rather, we have so much traffic already and parking. Our emergency vehicles often don't even go down Jade. They park right at the end. Same thing with Eagle. So I think from a safety standpoint, from the emergency vehicles, from the city vehicles, from the garbage truck, it's just a very unique infrastructure. So that's a big concern. I'm also a mom, so I have a couple of the kids and the dogs, and the safety I think of our neighborhood just needs to be considered. And yeah, it's a packed wild road. With no sidewalks, and then these 2 little side streets, this being one of them. And I agree with what everybody else said. And I'm sorry, this is a tough crowd, but it looks like there's still opportunity to come out investment ahead wise. So thank you. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.
Chair Delwich, we do have 2 individuals online as well.
Okay, are they wanting to speak?
To the individuals online, I have unmuted you. You may speak when you're ready, if you'd like to comment on this item. I don't see that either of them have unmuted themselves.
Okay, if nobody else wants to speak, then we can close the public hearing. Or the public comment portion of the hearing. Give the applicant, if you'd like to say anything more, you have the opportunity. Just let's try to make it brief, but certainly.
So I'll quickly kind of hit on the primary resident thing. So I'm active duty military. I'm stationed here, and 78 Avenue is my primary residence. When we went through the application initially, yes, we only put my father on there because, he was the primary resident, but he did not live at 7 Jade. He's retired now, and he planned on, spending a couple months here, throughout the year. And so once it was brought to our attention that, someone had to physically live there, that's when we did the quit claim deed, and I was put on as the property owner of the property. Any other questions or concerns? That's all I want to hit on.
Any thoughts, comments?
I'll just say that I think based off what I've read and heard tonight, that I'm not sure that it meets the approval criteria. Specifically, that it wouldn't encroach upon traditional neighborhood characteristics. I think we've heard a lot from the public tonight. They brought up some good points. I'm frankly a little concerned about the procedural history with this application as well. And I don't have some good feelings about the direction the applicant's trying to take it in. And I'm leaning towards denying this application.
I don't doubt anything that was said by anybody in this room, but it just doesn't add up. Something is amiss. And another part of it is the part that I brought up earlier, and nothing personal, but I don't agree with the staff's interpretation of the reply that when I said the individual rooms in a dwelling unit shall not be available for short-term rental unless the owner of the property resides on the property. It didn't say anything about parking. So that's just that line is clear as a bell, and it's not. Item number 6 in the code does not relate back to parking. And the major change when during the code rewrite was this particular line, and the spirit of the code was to stop people from renting out their houses. Like maybe somebody buying a house from out of state, renting it out short term and having a detrimental impact on the neighborhood. So we changed that part of the code to ensure that the owner is living there, regardless. I mean, the parking is addressed, but not on item number 6. So it's very, very vague about whether or not the owner will be living there, how many rooms there are, and so forth. So I think that is kind of the elephant in the room, and from my point of view.
I think there are many inconsistencies in the application, and I too am uncomfortable with what I perceive to be a workaround to get Dylan Widener's name on the property. I also think that just Pawnee Avenue is very, very steep. Jade Avenue, very narrow, dirt road. I just think it's a poor location for a short-term rental, and the inconsistencies in the application are concerning. And I haven't seen too many applications for short-term rentals where there was this level of community response in opposition, and that resonates with me.
I concur, but we are called to make decisions based on whether it complies with the code and the requirements or not. I believe that this application is questionable in its compliance with the occupancy and ownership requirements of the code. And I believe it's fairly clear that there is a discrepancy and a conflict between the occupancy that it was stated and the parking requirement that is offered as a amendment or requirement condition of approval by the staff, which is to say that there should not be the owner parking at the site at the same time as a short-term renter is parking at the site. There is only parking for one. And so this occupancy requirement and statements seem to be in conflict with the parking requirements. And there's a major safety risk in parking on Jade. There's a firefighter who lives there who needs to get in and out of that property and is often blocked based on what we've heard from other comments in the past by parking on that road. So parking is a pretty important requirement for safety and access for this particular resident. Based on that, I'd like to present a motion. Okay. Based on this information, I submit a motion to deny the short-term rental to 306 at 7 Jade Avenue based upon the findings that the request does not meet the review criteria for granting a short-term rental to 306 as set forth in City Code Section 18064.5. I need my glasses.
Second.
Okay, is there any more discussion? Okay, then let's vote. All in favor of the motion? Okay, so that is unanimous. And vote, the request is denied. Like, take a moment to let people clear out here. Okay, the next item. Hey, we do have a meeting going on. Could we keep it down? Next item is short-term rental 2307 at 7 Mountain View Road.
I am requesting on behalf of the applicant that we continue this meeting to a date certain of February 13th. Sorry, my computer died. February 14th of 2024. The applicant is still working through some comments from staff regarding its completeness. So that's why we're requesting an extension or continuation.
We have a motion? February 7th, that's. Yeah, that they're asking for a 2-month. Yeah. Can I have that? Would someone like to make that motion?
I make a motion that we continue that to February 14th.
I'll second that.
That's Valentine's Day.
All in favor? Okay. Move on. Item D, new business, proposed amendment to the Land Use and Development Code regarding the waiver of replat and properties in the floodplain.
Thank you, Chair Delwich and members of the Planning Commission. So we are proposing a very quick amendment outside of our 6-month schedule that we've been anticipating for these periodic cleanups. And that's largely because we've had a few issues arise with the new code language and how it relates to properties in the floodplain. So currently in our subdivision code, it requires that properties that maybe are several whole platted lots, portions of platted lots, this, that, and the other, often in the original town plat, need building permits, which is a very normal thing. However, our subdivision code requires that they be whole platted lots in order to be eligible for a building permit. Well, that's not really a reasonable ask for every time a property owner downtown wants to pull an electrical permit or pull a permit to rearrange some walls in their structure to fully replat. And it also becomes an issue because there in the regional building code, there is something that says when you have properties less than 2.5 acres, you can't plat a lot in the 100-year floodplain. It has to be platted as a tract. Technically, tracts cannot have buildings in them. They're not occupiable spaces. They're open spaces, easements, things of that nature versus a lot, which is what you typically think of when you see a single family home or a building of any kind. So that creates a conflict. So the way that in Manitou being unique, The way around it, but still having an opportunity for staff to get necessary right-of-way dedications or easements when one of those buildings wants to upgrade, is to allow that property to be inherently eligible for a waiver of replat. That waiver of replat was initially thought of to address situations very similar to this, but we just didn't quite understand the floodplain component at the time. So now we're coming in to add it as an eligibility criteria to the waiver of replat. So that property owner would still need to prove that this lot is a quote unquote lot of record, having existed prior to 1976, if I remember correctly. And it would still give staff the opportunity to ask for any drainage easements if they're right next to the creek or their building goes over the creek. So we still have an opportunity to get things that benefit the city and that we should be asking for. But then we're also not putting them in this kind of catch-22 situation where they have to have a whole platted lot, but they technically can't have a whole platted lot according to the regional building code. We feel like this is a reasonable ask. It's a win for the city to get these necessary easements and also a win for these property owners to not have to get caught in this catch-22. I should also add to this description, the reason that we ask for it to be a whole platted lot is to assure that an illegal subdivision didn't occur. And so we still want to make sure we keep this language so that we can keep watching out for those illegal subdivisions. But then understanding that doesn't really happen in this main downtown core or along Bruxton are the properties primarily affected. So this is our quick code amendment. It only affects the waiver of replat section. We just added some language of fourth criteria or fifth criteria to that section. And I believe Chelsea, who's the mastermind and found this issue, also wants to add some things.
Yes, I see floodplains in my sleep now. So I just wanted to point out that this staff is proposing to limit this to properties that are already developed and it will not exempt any proposed structures from the building code or the floodplain code.
So that is the code amendment before you. We didn't prepare a PowerPoint just because we felt like it was more of a conversation, but this is a hearing item tonight. So we are asking for a vote unless the Planning Commission would like more time to review and would like to postpone.
Any thoughts? Mike?
I'm just a definition, I guess. I'm not sure what a whole platted lot is. So if somebody owns a property that has 7 small lots, would they be required to replat that into one to make it a whole?
So that is exactly where the waiver of replat may come in. But technically, yes. So even in the Old Town plat where you have like multiple 20-foot wide lots and you bought like 6 of them at a time, the waiver of replat is a way to recognize that configuration as if it were a whole platted lot without having to go through the whole platting process. So it's kind of like an administrative workaround. But whole platted lots are more common on the newer areas of town. It's really where this older development pattern exists that we see that happen.
So what's the definition of a whole platted lot?
I'll look up the specific definition, but it's essentially in the legal description, it would read lot 1 of Garden of the Gods Estate subdivision, filing number 2 or something like that.
I got it.
That'd be an example.
Thank you.
And just to elaborate on that a little bit, 328 Manitou Avenue is one of the properties that we've run into this on. So when we see that on our zoning code here, we can see that it's less than the 2.5 acres that is required by the floodplain code. And when we go to the El Paso County Assessor site, we see that this is their legal description. So not only is it portions of lots, it's also portions of a vacated roadway. And so but again, it's existed as this since, I mean, these buildings were built in the late 60s. Some of them are older than that. It is very clearly has been that configuration of lots for a long time and should be, they should be able to, in our opinion, pull building permits to rehabilitate that property as needed.
Right, would another example be, it seems like that recently with Adams Mountain Cafe, they straddled to.
Yes, so Adams Mountain Cafe is a perfect example. So that particular property is multiple platted lots, and in that case, the building straddles a few of them. And so before the waiver of replat existed in our new code, they were required to replat. Luckily, that building is outside of the 100-year floodplain, so they would have been able to, as they have, pulled building permits without completely replatting. However, if they ever wanted to do an addition under the old code, they would have had to go through a whole subdivision plat process. Versus now, that property is more than likely eligible for a waiver of replat.
I'll take advantage of my on mic. I had the same experience. I had 7 lots on my property and we were expanding in the cottage over a lot line. So we had to replat to dissolve that lot line. I don't know if that would be unnecessary nowadays with this waiver.
Yes, so with the waiver of replat, you wouldn't have, if you were able to show that that lot existed in its current configuration prior to that 1976 timeline, that's part of the definition of what we call a lot of record, then you would be eligible for a waiver of replat and not have to replat your whole property.
If that property was within the floodplain. Okay.
Could you restate the amendment language for us? Simply.
Yes, let me pull up the specific language real quick. Okay, so specifically what's being added to the code under the waiver of replat application section is a criteria for eligibility. And it reads the fourth criteria being the parcel is less than 2.5 acres, is located in a floodplain, and has been developed prior to January 2024, which is our assumption of when the code would go into effect.
Thank you.
Okay, I can make a motion if no more discussion.
Chair, I do have one individual who is also online still,
Okay,
if you would.
okay, I'll open the hearing to the public. Anybody in the audience would like to comment, now would be the time.
I do not see that they're unmuting themselves.
Okay, then I will close the public comment and I would move that we recommend the city council that 1806-417 waiver of replat be amended to add an item 2D, which states the parcel is less than 2.5 acres, is located in a floodplain, and has been developed prior to January 2024.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Let's vote. And that recommendation passes. So, any other business? I have an item. This is for Austin. In our current municipal code, we have a requirement before someone can run for office, they have to prove 12 months of residency. And I was curious, land use is different, but would it be possible to add that requirement to the short-term rentals that one would have to have proven a year's residency before they can even apply for a short-term rental?
It's a great question. Short answer is I would recommend against it, and here's why. In the Fifth Circuit, which is where Louisiana is, there's just a court or a case that's come out of there involving short-term rentals. And they actually found that the owner occupancy requirement, making someone prove that they live in a place before having an opportunity to avail themselves of an economic benefit of the place, is actually unconstitutional. It's a violation of their due commerce rights. So they found it to be a violation of the US Constitution. That's a federal circuit, so it applies to a handful of states now. I would not be surprised if we get that ruling here fairly soon. There's a pretty big case going on in Colorado with short-term rentals, and that's on the table. So we'll see which way the Colorado courts go. But for now, I'd advise my clients to kind of steer away from those kinds of requirements, at least until we get a resolution on the merits with the Colorado case.
Can you elaborate at all on what the case is about?
Yes, so there's two big short-term rental cases going on in Colorado right now. One is against Estes Park, and the other is against a handful of municipalities in Summit County. They are going after two different things. In Estes Park, they are going after whether it is a takings, it's not, in my opinion, and probably any lawyer's opinion, to put additional regulations on occupancy type for residences, so short-term versus long-term residences. So the question there is it legal to add additional requirements for short-term residences versus long-term residences? I'm very confident it is, and I think that will be the ruling in that case. The Summit County case is definitely going to change the game if it actually gets resolved on the merits, because they threw the entire kitchen sink at it and they're using precedent from other jurisdictions that has been found to be favorable. So we saw literally every single type of challenge you can bring. So they have due process claims, substantive and procedural. The substantive due process claims, that's where you've got to show that your regulation is rationally based and you're trying to actually fix an impact. I think has a pretty good argument because it's based off affordable housing, and they didn't show how short-term rentals affected affordable housing. It sort of makes sense in theory. You're taking housing supply away from long-term occupants, but the argument that Airbnb is positing is that we're actually lowering the cost for short-term rentals. So there's a type of housing that we're actually lowering. We're taking a bunch of housing from this bucket and we're putting it in that bucket. The net is the exact same. And so there might be a little bit different costs for one group over another, but the net is the same. So that's their argument there. And they've got about a 50-page study to break it or to support it. And they've got a whole host of other arguments. They have a huge amount of money, some really big lawyers working on it. So that one I doubt gets resolved beforehand. I think it's probably going to get resolved on the merits, and that's going to change the jurisprudence in Colorado. And we will certainly need to be a meeting very shortly after, depending on how that goes. That was a whole lot to a simple question. But
Yeah.
you always risk that with me.
Yeah, okay. So they're arguing that the short-term rentals is not a plausible rationale.
Correct. That they haven't shown that, at least. And they're basically saying, if you show us the impact on traffic, on parking, on affordable housing, then you can probably regulate it differently, but you haven't. You don't have any studies to prove it. And we do that to show the opposite.
Okay.
So we'll see how it goes. They've literally thrown everything at it, and in other jurisdictions, pretty much every major jurisdiction but Colorado, we have been immune from them for a long time. It was a matter of time. There has been some overturning of short-term rental regulations.
Okay. Have you been following the Woodland Park?
What's that?
Have you been following what's happening in Woodland Park?
I haven't. Tell me about it.
Oh, they yesterday passed an initiative outlawing short-term rentals in residential zones.
Gotcha. Interesting. Certainly a big issue. Quick plug if you want to learn more about it. I do have an article in the Colorado Lawyer about short-term rentals. So
is it accessible to us?
Yeah, definitely. I can send it to Hannah and she can send it along if you'd like.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Thank you.
And I do have a quick thing if that's all right. So this is actually going to be my last meeting with you all, which I'm super bummed about, but I have a colleague coming to take my place. We had to do some meeting shuffling internally with my firm. I'll still be working with you guys. I'll still be working with Hannah and the planning staff, but I won't be able to be here on Wednesdays with you all. And I want to say it was such a pleasure. You guys are such an intellectual and thoughtful group, and I think that's fairly rare in my experience. And so it's been a real pleasure being with all of you.
Thank you. We're going to miss you.
I have just a point of information for me. I'm still not clear how something gets on our application, how an application gets on our agenda when it is incomplete and is going to be due for a continuation.
Thank you, Commissioner Latimer. It's definitely a judgment call. So staff is often having to make a decision on how customer service friendly we should be versus how much do we throw the book at somebody, so to speak. And we definitely try to walk that line. So when we have an applicant that's provided 98% of the materials and keeps saying, yeah, I'll get you the other 2%, no worries. We feel reasonably confident that we should be noticing it on an agenda. And sometimes that does not work out. And so in this particular case, we've been asking for that 2% over and over and over, and this individual just hasn't gotten it to us yet. However, they keep saying that they will. Under code, they are permitted 3 continuances before an application is either decided on or withdrawn. So that's how we get to that particular situation. We always try to work with somebody versus like, if they do get us that 98% and then the next day they get us that other 2%, them having to wait another whole month before we can actually do a notice for the next meeting. We try to avoid that as much as possible because we understand like a monthly meeting schedule can be tough for some folks. So we do our best, and sometimes it doesn't quite pan out.
Do you give them due dates? Needs to be here in order to be on the agenda. It needs to be here by such and such a time.
Yes, and we do have those calendars published.
Just real quick, I think as a team, we need to crank up our entertainment value if there's only one person online. Something's wrong. And that was my question. Do we have a process to, if these meetings are canceled? Or even at the very least, our cell numbers to put out a mass text?
I do have everybody's phone number, so I am able to reach out to individual or commissioners individually. And I have reached out to Commissioner or Chair Delwich to see if we should move a meeting online because of weather or anything like that before. So no, there isn't like an exact process laid out. However, I do also want to say, because we do publish legal notices, we do have to have some type of meeting. And so even if we were to move a meeting online, somebody would still have to be here to make sure that folks who showed up in person were still able to access an online format.
Well, I mean, it would make sense to have somebody do a mass text to the masses if the meeting is canceled, so we don't have to drive in the weather type thing.
Right. Yeah. If there's a flat out cancellation because of an emergency or something like that, we would absolutely be letting you know.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Let's adjourn the meeting. Great.
Happy holidays.